Before dawn, the mountains were already burning. No sirens, no city lights, just fire moving uphill, quietly, through forests that take centuries to grow and minutes to lose. This wasn't somewhere remote in another country. This was India's northeast, a region we imagine as endlessly green, rain-soaked, safe from fire. But this winter, the forests of the Lohit Valley in Arunachal Pradesh and the Duzuko Valley of Nagaland told a different story. The fires grew so intense and the terrain so inaccessible that civilian systems alone couldn't contain them. Helicopters had to be called in. Soldiers had to step in. The Indian Air Force and the Army were deployed not at the border but over burning forest. That alone should make us pause. Because this wasn't just an environmental incident, it was a signal of how climate stress, fragile ecosystems, and governance gaps are starting to overlap in places we rarely see on primetime news. Let's understand what actually happened. In recent weeks, severe forest fires broke out in two ecologically critical valleys, Lohit in Arunachal Pradesh and Duzuko along the Nagaland-Manipur border. As the fires spread uphill, ground teams struggled to reach them. Roads were limited, slopes were steep, winds were unpredictable, so the Indian Air Force deployed Mi-17 helicopters. Flying at altitudes between 9,000 and 11,000 feet, where the air is thin and visibility poor, pilots carried out aerial water bombing operations. Over 12,000 liters of water were deployed with close coordination between the Air Force, the Army, state forest departments, and local administrations. The fires were eventually brought under control. But the real question is, why did it take military intervention to put out forest fires in peacetime? To answer that, we need to understand why forest in the northeast matters so deeply. The Seven Sisters, Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, Nagaland, Manipur, Meghalaya, Tripura, and Mizoram lie within one of the world's most important biodiversity hotspots. In several of these states, forests cover more than 65% of the land. Arunachal Pradesh alone holds the second largest forest area in India. These forests quietly do three things. They absorb carbon, they regulate water for the Brahmaputra and Barak river systems, and they support the livelihoods of indigenous and tribal communities. They also serve another role we don't talk about enough, acting as natural buffers along sensitive borders with China and Myanmar. So when these forests burn, the loss isn't just green cover. It's ecological, economic, and strategic. Now, forest fires here are not new. They've always occurred during the dry months, especially between January and April. What has changed is how fast they spread and how hard they are to stop. Dry winters, bamboo and pine that burn easily, steep slopes that carry fire uphill. Add to this human activity, shifting cultivation, tourism, campfires, forest produce collection, and over everything else, a slow but steady background shift. Climate change. Climate change does not light the match, but it dries the forest floor. It shortens recovery time and it turns small fires into fast-moving ones. Temperatures are rising, rainfall is becoming erratic. Dry spells are lasting longer. Meghalaya, once India's wettest state, has already recorded declining monsoon rainfall in recent years. This creates a loop. Fires release carbon, carbon increases warming increases fire risk. The cycle feeds itself. The impacts don't stay in the forest. Burnt slopes lose their grip on soil. When the monsoon arrives, that soil moves. Rivers carry more silt, floods hit harder, landslides become more frequent. For local communities, this means lost livelihoods, health risk from smoke, and rising conflict with wildlife pushed out of shrinking habitats. The idea of the Northeast as permanently lush and rain-rich is quietly breaking down. So why the military? Because in remote high-altitude terrain with weak civilian firefighting infrastructure, only the armed forces have the aircraft, logistics, and readiness to respond quickly. The Indian Air Force's role shows how critical civil-military coordination has become in disaster response. But it also raises an uncomfortable question. If we need helicopters and soldiers every fire season, are we really prepared? India does have forest fire monitoring systems, satellites, alerts, early warnings, but the weakest link remains the last mile. Getting equipment to the ground, training local teams, reaching fires before they grow. What does moving forward look like? In the short term, better early warnings, pre-positioned equipment, regulated tourism, stronger coordination. In the long term, community-led fire management, climate-informed planning, fire-resilient forests, and serious investment in local disaster preparedness. The fires in Arunachal Pradesh and Nagaland are not isolated events. They are early warnings. Warnings that ecosystems we depend on quietly are becoming easier to break and harder to defend. Because when forests in the northeast burn silently, the consequences rarely stay confined to the hills.